Chief Sanders, we are at 1:31, so we're ready to get started.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is David Sanders. I'm the Chief Probation Officer in Pima County, and I also chair the Legislative Committee. Today is January 26, 2024. The time is 1:31 p.m. And I'll call to order a joint meeting of the Legislative and Executive Committees. Does Commission staff can now take roll call, please?
Chief David Sanders.
Present.
You're gonna have to write present.
Okay. Director David Byers. Sheriff Chris Nanos.
Buddy James for Chris Nanos.
Gene Bishop.
Present.
Chief Cara Riley.
Nope.
Steve Stahl. Rachel Mitchell.
Hi, Rebecca Baker for Rachel Mitchell.
And Colonel Jeffrey Glover.
David Bird here for Colonel Glover.
Yeah, I have it.
All right, you have to pay that.
Chief Sanders, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Item 2 on the agenda is approval of the minutes from our last meeting that was held on December 13, 2023. The chair would entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
David Bird, motion to accept.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Rebecca,
Second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Rebecca. Any discussion or comment? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion passes. Thank you. Item 3 on the agenda is an update on priority legislation. Molly?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Again, truly appreciate you guys hopping on the call this Friday afternoon. We are 19 days into the legislative session, and there have been 1,212 bills introduced to date. I'm just gonna, because our priority legislation is our SCMOD bill, I'm gonna have Director Lefevre do just a quick update on the status of that bill, and then I can do an update on the membership bill.
Thanks, Molly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. So we, as discussed at the commission meeting 2 weeks ago, we have House Bill 2073 introduced and Senate Bill 1117 introduced as a mirror on the Senate side. Both have been assigned to their committees, although we have not been able to get them on a committee agenda yet. We're getting some pushback from some of our local partners that are expressing some concerns with the bill. So we'd like to discuss a possible kind of strategic shift with you all today and kind of get some thoughts and guidance from you all on what we think we could do to address this. The other concern we have is obviously there's an appropriation ask in the bill for I think $1.4 million to help build the system and to bring some basically in our mind, the state agencies in line or get them ready to be able to report into the system. We're being told by the legislature, no money's available. Obviously the governor's released executive budget said no new funding for any technology projects that aren't currently being funded by the legislature. So we're not very optimistic that ultimately there's going to be any funding provided if we're able to get the policy portion of the bill passed. So the first is, again, just letting you know that more than likely we're going to have to strip out an appropriations from the bill if we want to get the policy passed. And then to help us basically in twofold, we're thinking of doing the following with the bill. We're thinking of offering an amendment up to the bill that would do two things. First, it would take the appropriations out. And then secondly, it would require only data collection for state agencies So primarily DPS, the courts, and the Department of Corrections. And then provide a way for local entities that want to report into the system for them to be able to opt into being able to do the reporting. Doesn't change any of the other provisions. They would only have to do it if the commission deems them ready to. So we want to make sure that if there are folks that want to do this, that we have the funding available to help them do their system changes to be able to do it. But it'll do a couple of things for us. It'll focus in our ability to go and seek federal grants to build the system and to bring entities in, because we'll have a much more limited kind of scope that we would be writing for grant dollars on. And the second thing it will do, it will help to ease the concerns or ease the pressure that we're getting from some of the local groups on not wanting this bill to go forward for whatever reason. So those are kind of the changes that we were kicking around here in the office that we'd like to get some thoughts on from you all about the reasonableness or feasibility of kind of seeking those changes to get the policy portion of this through the process. Hey, Liana, how are you? Come on in.
Good, how are you?
Good. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm open for questions on kind of where we sit with the squats process right now.
Any questions for the director?
It looks like Mr. Byrd has his hand up, Chairman.
Mr. Byrd?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Executive Director, thank you. I just, in light of the conversation, right, and obviously the executive's budget proposal, do we have any thoughts or plans or strategies related to the, I guess, the funding? I know it would be somewhat minimal when compared to some other major IT projects for large state agencies, but is there any thought to the fiscal support for this for the state agencies involved?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Byrd. So we've already begun exploring Lloyd specifically, who does our systems improvement work and is primarily responsible for drafting our yearly NCHIP and NARIP grants to the feds that are around, records improvement areas that he feels that we could seek and have a reasonable chance of successfully being funded for work in this area. Again, those dollars are not unlimited, which is one of the reasons why a more scaled down scope is, I think, would be beneficial in those areas to kind of help us write that grant for a dollar figure that would allow us to build a system, bring it online, and have the funding available for those initial state agencies to do it. So, that being said, we would seek to write that grant here spring, summer, and as typically is funded in October, November timeframe, which would then begin the process of having funding available to build something to bring it online. Does that answer your question, Mr. Byrd?
Yes, sir. It did. Thank you for that. That was very helpful. I guess my only follow-up to that would be, and I was running late from another meeting. I apologize. I don't have the draft language in front of me or the bill in front of me, but I don't remember the implementation timeline. Does the implementation timeline for this to go in effect as far as requirements for state agencies give us time for the efforts that you're talking about? And then if we're unsuccessful, for example, does that give us time to adjust internally to meet that timeline requirement?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Byrd. So the way the language of the bill reads is the state system is deemed to be operational when it's presented to the commission and the commission votes that it's operational and ready. And furthermore, no agency is required to report into it until the commission votes that or determines that they're eligible to report. And we put those two provisions in there very specifically to ensure that we had the time frame needed. That wasn't specifically done by a date, but that we could work with and provide the funding necessary to agencies so that they become ready to report. The agency signs off that they feel they're ready. Our tech team has looked at it and says they're ready. And then we would go to the commission and say, commission, these agencies are now ready to begin the process of being hooked in and ready to report.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Looks like it looks like Dave has a question, Dave.
Yeah, Mr. Byrd?
Yeah, I guess just two. I sent you an email, Andy, and we could talk more, but just a couple questions. First of all, under current law, the commission can already require agencies to provide data. We don't need this bill to do that. Although there's, as you know, there's some policy reasons you've always been interested in doing it. So I mean, the state agencies, if they're all agreeing, we could do it now under current law, couldn't we?
Mr. Chairman, I'd have to go back and review the section of law to see if it's that section also contains that it has to be a vote of the commission that the system is operational.
No, but
So
I mean,
we could
the commission wouldn't do it unless, you know, if you wanted to do it without the bill, you come up with a plan and the commission would have to vote a timetable and all that. But I think the first section of the bill has the law in it that's already on the books. So you might take a look at that. But then secondly, what you guys probably have thought about this more than I just saw your email an hour or so ago. What do we get? In your view, the courts already report out, and we have online all the dispositions of cases, how many went to prison, how many get probation, and so forth. When you bring the prisons in and you bring DPS in, what data do we then get, Andy, that would be helpful? I'm just not understanding what more we get in terms of the combined database.
Sure, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Byers, you know, the vision of this bill and the functionality of what we've proposed has always been in bringing those disparate systems all together in one place so that we could identify questions that were being asked or identify things that would require us to go to your system or DPS's system or correction system independently to get the data and bring it together to answer the question. So, you know, the data points that are in the policy portion of the bill are such that we can begin to show and build out some of those data dashboards to begin answering some of the questions that we've been getting. And I will say this, I have a strong suspicion or strong belief that we are going to get a good number of local agencies that would want to participate in the system, even without it being mandatory, and specifically our county attorneys, which I know are feeling pressure to provide reports and systems that, you know, they view this system as something that's very beneficial. Some of our sheriff's offices, I think, would be willing to share data if we had the funding available to provide them the resources they would need to do systems. So, you know, to me, this is you know, while we would love to have the elephant for dinner, we're not going to have the elephant for dinner. We're going to have to figure out how to eat this elephant a couple bites at a time. And I think this gives us the best opportunity to put a system in place that will help us begin to show the functionality and the benefits of that system for the state, so that we would be able to go back and begin to work on additional funding in future grant years, or even through the legislature when times change and we have a funding surplus that would maybe allow us to go back and seek that funding. So that was kind of our thought, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Byers.
Well, I you know, that helps because I think the data that's missing is the arrest data and the prosecution. I'm not sure what like DPS data adds. I'm just not clear what you'd be adding when you take all the court data. And I'm not sure what corrections add. Maybe there's something that adds to the richness of it. I hear what they are. But anyway, if you don't get the bill, I think you can do the exact same thing you want to do under the current law. It just, the commission will have to put a plan together and get a federal grant. And then if they voluntarily, the prosecutors, sheriffs, so on, wanted to come in, they could come in. I wouldn't, I mean, I guess the bill's nice, but it doesn't seem to me like it's needed without the money.
I mean, it's a good point, Mr. Byers and Mr. Chairman, and certainly something we could explore. You know, we prefer to have it in statute because I think that makes it clear to everybody that wants to participate what they would be participating in. But your point's taken, and we certainly could explore that as a fallback option if necessary.
And Mr. Chairman and Mr. Byers, one of the benefits too, and this is, I think, you know, we've gone out and done a fairly significant stakeholder outreach, as you know, and at least the data points that we have in the bill gives everybody a roadmap for which data points we've all agreed to collect. So that was another reason that there's the benefit of the bill. It kind of outlines really prescriptively what everyone's agreeing is okay for collection of data points.
Yeah, but that's the problem, Molly. They're not agreeing. And then that's, my staff's telling me that you're getting pushback from various, departments, whether they're police or sheriff or whatever, because they don't want to give all that data. I mean, that's kind of the yin and the yang. You try to specify the data. Some people are all upset about that. It's too much work. You can't win on this. I think this is a tough one. But anyway, if it's voluntary, it makes it a lot easier, obviously, because if someone doesn't want to do it, they won't do it. But again, I think you got the authority to do it today anyway.
Thank you. Any other questions on that? And I guess kind of given the questions and comments we had, does that seem like a reasonable way to move forward with trying to keep this process moving through this session?
Director, are you proposing that we withdraw the funding request in the legislation?
Mr. Chairman and members, barring a sudden shift in revenue, like we strike uranium or something somewhere that we weren't anticipating, I don't think we're gonna, I think it'll get held up and stripped out anyway. So yes, that would be my recommendation. And trust me, that pains me. Like I can't tell you to take that out of there because my mantra is always, if you don't ASK, you don't GET, but we put the ask out and we've been told no already. So I don't want to have that hold up a bill.
But Mr. Chairman, Andy, are there two elements? You want the funding out, which, I mean, I'm going through the same thing. There's like a zero chance you're going to get new money this year, realistically. But are you also wanting them to amend the bill? The substance of the bill?
So yeah, that was the first thing. So as I'm hearing, I think there's agreement that we should just go ahead and take the funding out. And the second is, if we came up with amended language around kind of what I described, that would make it only required of the state agencies with a mechanism to allow locals to opt in, if that would be agreeable to this group. And then if so, we'll work with the council to put something together.
Well, let me just follow up and ask, what about the prosecutors? You seem to indicate that they're supportive. Why not keep the prosecutors in? It seems like it's law enforcement, that's the sheriffs and the police that are balking it. Why not keep what's the thinking about dropping the prosecutors out?
For Mr. Chairman and Director Byers, for simple ease of bill language amendments, the way the bill is currently worded is it's a state and local agencies or local agencies. It would be an easy amendment to take the local out and just keep it at state, and add that mechanism for folks to opt in if they want, if they're a local. I don't.
Well, I mean, it's not that hard to write language to say the state and county attorneys. But I don't know. I'm taking it that you're saying the county attorneys are generally in favor. Is that we have Rebecca on? I don't know anybody else. Is that the case? Because that would add a lot of richness to the data. Because now you're bringing in data on plea bargaining and sentencing practices and things. I think that's what's missing. We had a recent task force that tried to look at the issues because there's various people to make accusations, and there's no way to really determine, if they're true or baloney or whatever. So, I mean, bringing the prosecutors in, I think, would add a lot of richness to the project, but I wouldn't want to bring them in if they're objecting to it.
I was just going to say, in my conversations that I've had with other county attorney offices, I've not heard anyone object to this bill. I know some are wanting to see it come online because they feel like it's going to alleviate some of the pressure to do different types of reporting that other organizations have asked for. So I do think that I'll just say I haven't heard any county attorney offices complain about it. I certainly haven't spoken to all 15, but I haven't heard any objections.
And Mr. Chairman and Rebecca, you're absolutely right. We've been meeting with a lot of the county attorneys around the state. And if anything, they're definitely supportive of it. So I echo your sentiments on that.
Yeah. Mr. Chair and Director Byers, I guess my reasoning for maybe not wanting to include or exclude specific groups is just from a political standpoint, do I really want to have ask somebody to have to stand up in committee and say why they are or are not on that list? I'm trying to be respectful. If folks have some disagreements with the bill language right now, I don't want to have somebody call a sheriff up and ask them why they don't want to be in the bill at this point, or a chief why they don't want to be in the bill at this point.
Well, but I think that's the reality. They're already over there telling the legislators that it's too much of a burden to supply the data. That's the answer, I think. And just face it, there's over 100 law enforcement agencies, so it becomes way more complex when you start to get all the law enforcement. There's only 15 county attorneys. I just think the project, I don't see a reason to drop out the prosecutors if they're not against it. The result would be much better than just the courts and the state corrections, because I think it's repetitive data. We've got the same people, we report the same things about them. I don't know what it gets us. So I'd be in favor of just dropping out law enforcement, but keeping prosecutors in myself.
I would
Okay,
say
well,
oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Rebecca. Sorry, please.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Byers, I would say the one thing is this bill has always had an appropriation in it. And I think that if we take the appropriation out, you probably should go back and talk to the county attorneys about if there's something that they have to pay for, are they going to be, as able or interested in doing this? And so making it permissible for county agencies then would enable those who are really wanting to do this and have the funding or the ability to do it, to still do it.
Yeah, that would be a reasonable idea. But I think what I'm hearing Andy say is they're going to try to go get a federal grant to cover the cost of doing this, which could include any kind of cost for the prosecutors. But if you make it permissible, that'd be fine too.
Okay. All right. Well, Mr. Chairman, I will reach out to the county attorneys and get a sense from APAC on, or all of them, I guess, just to see what their thoughts are on whether they would want to do it as permissible or required. If it's required, they're going to have to wait for us to find the funding to do it. If, as Rebecca said, if it's permissible and some of them have the ability to do it, we could begin working with them sooner than we can find the funding to do it. So my preference would be just to leave it at stated and provide the opt-in option at this point. And then if we hear differently, we could always change that language as we move through the process.
Yeah, and there's one final thought. There's at least some legislators talking, one prosecutor talking about getting an appropriation out of the opiate money, the 87 million, to link prosecutors with courts. And so you might explore that possibility of getting funding from that source, if you can make the argument that would make things better, because there is that opiate money that they're going to dish out to various groups at some point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Director Byers. We can certainly follow up with the AG's office, who's managing the state pot of money for that.
Yeah, I think actually the lead on what I'm understanding is a Pinal County attorney is over there lobbying to do something, because we've been contacted about what it would take to, as far as I know, all of the non-Maricopa County attorneys want to link their databases and the data flow from them to their courts and back. And Maricopa already has that through a system they set up years ago. But anyway, Pinal's the one that's got the lead. You might want to reach out to him, Andy, and see what's going on with it. Maybe it could tie in here.
Sure, that's great. I appreciate that piece of news, Director. So just so I'm clear, are we okay with pursuing that change?
Yeah, I think so. Does that need to be framed as a motion or not, Andy?
For clarity's sake, since it's our priority bill, I would prefer it as a motion. So the motion would be to strip out an appropriations and to change language that would require only state agencies to be required and provide an opt-in option for locals.
I'd be happy to make the motion. I would move that we give them permission to amend Senate Bill 1117 and 2073 to remove the appropriation and to add language making it mandatory for state agencies, but permissible for local agencies to participate.
Jean Bishop, I'll second.
Thank you, Rebecca and Jean. Any further comment or discussion before the vote? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Molly, are we ready for 3B?
Yes, we are, Mr. Chairman. So,
Okay,
just a real quick update for everyone. I've got a few bills and then, so just a real quick update on the membership bill. It has not been, it's been dropped, but it hasn't received a number yet. So that is the membership bill that Representative Travers is running for ACJC, where it would add a public defender and a victim's advocate and a tribal chief of police or a tribal victim's advocate. Representative Travers has been doing a pretty bang up job getting people to sign on to the bill. And so we are hopeful that that will continue moving forward. Once we have a bill number on that, I will let the commission know what that is. Just a few bills that we're tracking quite a few bills. I've sent out the sheet to all of you so you know all of the bills. And just a few I'd like to highlight. House Bill 2043, which is the statute of limitations bill. I know the chiefs of police have been really following this one closely, as I think the courts are as well. Just a concern about the date of discovery of the crime by the appropriate charging authority to the date that the time occurred. I know that I'm just red flagging this or flagging it for you just to keep on your radar. I do believe that bill has been removed at this time, but it doesn't mean the bill is dead. That Grantham will probably bring it back with any amended changes, but just letting you know that's a bill to keep your eyes on. We also have House Bill 2120. This is really one that's for local municipalities because it would affect, we always like to not have laws put on local municipalities that prohibit them from making decisions on their own, so local control. And this one prohibits the city or town from reducing their annual operating budget below the prior year's level of funding for any law enforcement agency. So that's, again, just one to keep on your radar. House Bill 2134. This is the unlawful flight bill. This was ran yet last year. Pinal County is running this bill. And so that's one that, I would say keep an eye on. It's a good one that law enforcement is supporting. And then this one is House Bill 2243. Davin, I don't know if you wanted to kind of talk about this bill a little bit. I know Ryan was going to be here, but I know you're representing the DPS, but do you want to talk a little bit about this bill?
Yes, and just to clarify, I'm having some bandwidth issues, which is ironic given my position, but we're talking about 2243.
Yes, sir.
Okay, yes, thank you. I appreciate it. So this is a heavy edit rewrite of 411750, which has to do with our criminal history and fingerprint management and requirements for the state. It has to coincide with federal law. We're supporting and initiated this legislation, or helped get it initiated, for two primary reasons. One, we had a review by the FBI, even though they had previously approved the language that's currently in 1750 repeatedly. I won't attribute motives. They're irrelevant in this call, but the FBI basically came back and said there are some required changes from a legal perspective to align with other states, and changes with FBI processing practices related to seizures and criminal histories. And so they've put other legislation from the last 2, maybe 3 years, and then any other legislation related to fingerprinting requirements, for example, out of this section, on hold. Some of them have been temporarily approved. Some of them are simply not approved and in a hold pattern until we, Arizona, rewrite and update 1750. So the number one reason that we're doing this, and we're hoping for support, is to meet those requirements, align more clearly with federal requirements, and then we can, all of these state-specific initiatives requiring fingerprints for different purposes, board requirements groups, right? We can get back to doing that, which is part of our job. And then 2, we have been in the process for many years now, almost a decade, of preparing to bring in the RAPBAC program to Arizona. And this change to 1750 also includes the definition of RAPBAC, which is necessary for us to do from a state standpoint in rolling that out. And just really quickly, there's a huge public safety advancement with us being able to bring in RAPBAC. And so, for example, the capabilities that statutory change will give us is, once we implement that over the next 12 to 24 months, currently, if we issue a fingerprint clearance card, say to a nurse or to a school teacher, and then they go get arrested in a different state, there's no mechanism beyond self-reporting. There's no automatic mechanism for us to be notified and then for us to notify the employer or the employing agency. This definition in the statute would give us the ability to implement those programming changes to where out-of-state arrest processed through the FBI would come back, automatically notify us, and then there would be potential impacts to the fingerprint clearance cards, depending on the board requirements or the hiring requirements of the individual. So, and then if there's any questions.
Yeah, Devin, this is Dave. Could you explain a little bit more about the upfront? You say I guess the legislature has passed legislation that you're holding because it doesn't meet federal requirements. What requirements have to be changed in the state law now? What are they requiring now?
So to be candid, I don't have it in front of me and I can't give you a great answer. So I can come back with that. We had almost 20 different pieces of legislation going back 5 years that was in review or conditional review. The FBI's legal review team was very much years behind in the review process, not only for Arizona, but other states. And so, for example, some of our gaming bills, we had a DES related bill, I think 2 sessions ago, where they went into, we've just been, in essence, a catch-22, where we've passed statutes, and I will collect that information and be able to get it to you. But we've passed statutes as a state that we then don't have the ability to implement, right? Because the statute has required a federal fingerprint-based check. And so we don't have the ability to do that, right? So we've worked with agencies, hey, we can do an Arizona state-only check, right? We can give you an update on where we're at in the process with the FBI. So I can get a specific list of the current bills that are still being impacted by that. We worked with the FBI and cleared a lot of them conditionally once we were able to show them the draft language changes for this 1750 and show that we were advancing the process to get the change done.
Well, that sounds pretty significant. I don't think anybody knew outside of maybe DPS that you weren't being able to do those things. I'd like to hear more someday, but maybe not this meeting. But I think people think things are being done, maybe they aren't. So, okay, well, thanks for the info.
Mr. Chairman, this is Andy.
Go ahead, Andy.
I'd like to request on behalf of the commission and the staff that this joint committee provide the authority for ACJC to sign in support of this legislation. I know that RAPBAC was one of the issues that was looked at and brought forward by the NICS task force a few years ago, and something that would be very helpful to the state. So, I think this is one of those clear choices or clear pieces of legislation that we as a body should be supporting.
I don't disagree.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to make a motion to that effect.
Go ahead, Rebecca.
I would move that ACJC support House Bill 2243.
Second.
We have a motion by Rebecca and a second by Dave Byers. Any further comment or discussion before the vote? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. There's just one more bill. It's one that the courts are tracking right now. It is 2046, and it's the Juror Information Master Juror List. This bill it's a good bill in the sense that it gives MVD the ability to have full contact information for members who are up for jury duty. So that's just the bill we're keeping an eye on, and to give you a heads up, that's one of the bills the courts are running. So that's as far as bills you guys have the list. Is there any other bills you would like to discuss or bring to this committee for discussion or consideration? If none, that concludes my legislative report.
Thank you very much, Molly. Item 4 on the agenda is call to the public. Have we had any inquiries from the public?
Mr. Chairman, we have not.
Okay. What are your thoughts, Director and Molly, about our next meeting? You want to set it out 2 weeks or 1 week?
That's up to the committee. I think with things moving relatively quickly right now, I would still suggest we meet next Friday.
Well, let's do that. And if something comes up that we need to change, we'll let you know. So we'll meet, our next meeting will be a week from today. And with that, I'll wish you a good afternoon. Thanks for dialing in, and we'll be adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members.
Thank you, everybody.